and good morning to everyone. Thank you for having me. This is my first time at the Food Governance Community of Practice meetings. I just want to confirm that everyone can see my screen.
Yes, the screen is visible.
Great. Thanks. So today I'm going to be speaking about some work that I did with the GCRO over the last year or two. It relates to the sorry, I'm just having trouble changing my slide. 1 second. Relates to the 15th occasional paper that the GCRO produced, and we looked at whether viewing urban agriculture with a green infrastructure approach could improve efforts to support food gardens. And we did this looking at community food gardens in the city of Johannesburg, acknowledging them as important components of the green infrastructure network, and analyzing them to understand how they are a multifunctional urban asset that can contribute to various development imperatives in the city. So if we look at food gardens firstly as a green asset, as sites where ecological and social systems overlap, we can see that food gardens, when productive and healthy, can deliver a very broad array of ecosystem services in the urban environment. And those range from the more direct supporting services and provisioning services of food and sort of habitat, to some of the less direct services like regulating services, as well as very important social services around cultural and recreational services for those who are lucky to be involved in urban agriculture. We also looked at food gardens as social assets. So this shows some data from the 5th Quality of Life survey, looking at households from various income brackets and why they grow food. And as you can see, overall participation in urban agriculture is fairly low, with only about 15% of households participating. And the majority of households are growing food to eat. But even though it seems like a small amount of households are growing food to sell, it could be argued that this also plays a socioeconomic role in the household, enabling households to avoid additional expenditure on food. So this is just one example of how food gardens can also be considered quite an important socioeconomic asset. The paper also looked at different ways of visualizing interlinkages between urban agriculture and social, economic, and environmental dynamics and processes in the city. And this is an interesting diagram called a causal loop diagram. So we've drawn out the linkages between health, poverty, and food security in this causal loop diagram, where the red lines show the food security linkages and the blue lines show the health and poverty linkages. A solid line shows a positive or direct correlation, whereas a dashed line shows a negative correlation. And I direct everyone to access the paper to see the other causal loop diagrams that we were able to create. And it's quite remarkable how when you view food gardens as a green infrastructure asset, how you can link them to many other aspects of urban processes. We also undertook some spatial analyses as another way of visualizing the key linkages between urban agriculture and socioeconomic and environmental processes in the city. This map shows a new layer that the students from UCL were able to create by identifying where community food gardens were in the city of Joburg. And this layer is overlaid with the green infrastructure layer for the city of Johannesburg. And it's, when you look at it from a green infrastructure perspective, food gardens are an important asset, especially in wards where other green infrastructure might be sparse, but also linking back to the how we can understand the food system and food security spatially. Food gardens are also important in the city, especially where food access to retailers and other and supermarkets and other sources of food is limited. Interestingly, and it's not shown in this map, we also managed to overlay food gardens with unemployment statistics as well as food demand statistics in the city of Joburg. And it was quite striking to see that areas with highest unemployment rates as well as highest food demand rates actually had the fewest food gardens. So we identified a potential opportunity to increase the number of food gardens in those areas to hopefully increase the delivery of some of those services to those areas. And just to bring it all together, the paper was very useful in understanding the various functions of food gardens as they can support enhancing nutrition security, as they provide ecosystem services, as they can provide economic opportunities, especially where gardens have adequate support and can be productive. And of course, where they can contribute to addressing climate change impacts. But we think it's very important to note that food gardens can only really do these things on a localized scale. And they provide these impacts to those who are directly interacting with them, which obviously in the case of Joburg has been quite limited due to the various challenges that other speakers have also mentioned. And it's also important to note that food gardens will not deal with any of these challenges in their entirety. And so the paper concludes with recommendations that food gardens can be a useful component of a more comprehensive approach to addressing socioeconomic needs and climate change impacts in the city. But we certainly feel that a green infrastructure approach, when it's mainstreamed in municipal processes, can certainly support increase support and investment to food gardens so that more of these benefits could be realized. And so the paper concludes with some recommendations for strengthening policy, management planning, and operational support for food gardens in the city of Johannesburg. Thanks.